Welcome to the MoneyRx for CRNAs Podcast, where you go behind the scenes with host Brett Fellows, CFP, as he explores the unique opportunities and challenges facing certified registered nurse anesthetist along the path to financial independence. In each episode, Brett shares expert insights and actionable advice, equipping you with the tools you need to take control of your financial destiny and retire on your terms. And now, here's your host, Brett Fellows.
Welcome to the MoneyRx for CRNAs Podcast. This week, we're talking about on the show whether you should view your house as an investment. And this is a question that comes up pretty frequently in our financial planning practice, and so it's something that I wanted to cover on the podcast today. So we're going to go over the arguments for considering your house as an investment, against considering your house as an investment, and then my take on whether or not you should do it and the circumstances where you should consider your house as an investment versus the circumstances where you shouldn't. So I hope you enjoy it. So today on the show, we're going to talk about your house. And the reason I want to talk about your house is that we've had a couple of CRNA listener questions come in recently about whether they should view their house as an investment or just a really expensive place to live. And this, frankly, is an age-old argument. Is your house an investment? Or should you exclude that from your investment portfolio? Because that's where you live, and we shouldn't conflate those two things together. Your investments and your other assets that you need to live off of. So today on the show, what I want to do is put some things into perspective for everyone and go over the arguments of why it could be an investment or why it might not be an investment. And then bring it back to my take on why it may or may not make sense to view this as an investment for you and your family. So as I said, this is an argument that has been going on for a very long time. And oftentimes in a financial planning setting, when we're talking about this with CRNA clients, I have noticed that people will use the argument that their house is an investment to justify spending a lot of money on improvements that they think that they want. They might say something like, well, we really want this new kitchen, or we want to put in this pool because it will raise the value of the home. And really, this is an investment long term. And really, we'll get that money back when we sell the home. And so for that reason, we're going to allow ourselves to borrow a bunch of money to get this stuff done. And honestly, that's all correct and perfectly fine. If you want to improve your kitchen or put in a pool, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But in general, the arguments for why this could be an investment are as follows. You have equity in it. You buy the house. Usually, you put a decent amount down on the house for the purchase, and then you borrow the rest of it. Let's say you buy a $500,000 house and you put $50,000 down. Well, now you have a $450,000 amount that you're borrowing to finance the rest of the purchase, and you have the $50,000 in equity. And what happens over time, as you know, as you pay down that mortgage, you make a payment every single month consisting of some principal and some interest. Now, the principal balance of your mortgage goes down every single month that you make a payment. And therefore, even if the value of your house doesn't change at all, you're still gaining equity because you're paying off the mortgage. So you have equity in it, and that equity grows over the life of your mortgage. Now, obviously, there's also a market for housing too, and that's based on supply and demand and affordability and a bunch of other factors, really. And in general, house prices increase over long periods of time. And so a lot of people will then try to justify the purchase of a big house by saying things like, well, this is an up-and-coming neighborhood. They're putting in a new school. And that's going to make this area a lot more attractive, and the demand for this house years down the road, when we might be thinking about selling it, is clearly going to be higher than it is today, and we'll certainly get our money back. Therefore, we can afford to stretch our budget a little bit more now. And again, in general, house prices go up over time. It is a good hedge against inflation. I was looking up the numbers on this, and if you look at the last 75 years across the country, house prices have gone up, on average, about 3.5% per year, which is good, but it's not that much higher than the rate of inflation. So those are the main reasons. You pay down the mortgage, you grow equity in the house over time, the market value of your house is probably going to go up over a long period of time, albeit maybe less than we think. And that means that if you pony up a lot of money to buy a house today, when you walk away from it down the road, hopefully you can sell it for more than you paid for it, and you'll have a smaller loan to pay off with the cash that comes in from the sale. So what that means is you walk away with a lot more cash. And on top of that, as I mentioned just a minute ago, you can also put money into that and boost the value of the house. An updated kitchen is going to increase the value. A pool is going to increase the value. Now, in reality, it's not going to go up the exact same amount that you put into the pool or the kitchen. If you put $75,000 into a kitchen, that does not mean that your house is now worth $75,000 more. So yes, you can put money into improvements on the house and it increases the value. But that in and of itself is not a terribly good investment because it's almost always a losing financial proposition. Now again, I don't want to get yelled at for this. This is not me saying you shouldn't do it because that might not be the right thing for your family. You might have plenty of cash coming in and be more than able to afford it. But that's the fact of the matter. If we look at the investment merits of putting in a new kitchen or a pool, it's not really compelling in the least. So those are the arguments for it. You have equity in it, the equity grows over time, the value of your house tends to grow, and if we put money into an asset and the value of that asset goes up, it could be reasonable to view that asset as a long-term investment. Okay, now, there are more arguments, I think, for why it might not be an investment. And the arguments against your house being an investment start with, well, it's your house. You need to live somewhere. Some of your budget needs to go towards some kind of housing. And we don't want to confuse money going towards housing as money going towards some kind of an investment, right? Especially if you have other people depending on you, like your children or your spouse or other family. So we might not want to confuse housing budget with investment savings because you don't want to live without it. And on top of that, when we think of investments, usually I like to think of them as things that we have control over in terms of when we buy and sell them. An investment is something that we put money into with the expectation that the value is going to go up over time and that we have the discretion to buy and sell at the right time for us. And with your house, you don't always have that discretion. The fact of the matter is, if you have a 4-bedroom house and you have your mother-in-law living with you and 2 kids who share a room and a guest bedroom, a master bedroom, well, you might not be able to downsize until you have fewer people living in the house with you. So you don't always have control when you buy and sell these things, which really is an issue for us thinking about your house as an investment. And honestly, it's only an investment if you plan to sell it at some point anyway. You might be in your forever house, which again is great, And you might have a really nice asset with a lot of equity in that house on your personal balance sheet. But if you never plan to move and realize the profit of that investment, well, then it's pretty hard to think of it as an investment in the first place. Now, on top of that, you also have high ongoing costs. That's not in and of itself not a reason to think of it as an investment. A lot of other investments do, like rental properties have high ongoing costs that you might think of as an investment. But your primary house, you have a more immediate need to fix stuff that breaks because that's where you're living. And on top of that, when we think of your house as an investment, the equity you have starts to look really, really attractive after a while, right? And when you view your own house as an investment, it then becomes really tempting to take out something like a home equity loan and use those funds to buy a car or another type of investment. And this is a concept that's called equity stripping. And I can't tell you how important it is to let the equity in your house grow and compound and just frankly forget about it. It is there for you. Yes, you can, of course, use it. You can take it out and go buy a boat if you want to. But building that equity in your home simply gives you more options down the road when you're in your 60s or 70s. And you do want to downsize once the kids are out of the house. So if you're thinking of your house as an investment, it does make that equity look more and more attractive. There are a lot of ways to access the equity, and we don't necessarily want to do that. So all of this is going to say that we shouldn't really speculate with your primary house that you're living in if that's foundational to your family. If it's not foundational to your family and you're comfortable moving every couple of years, or you're single and you're comfortable identifying areas that are going to go up in value, and that's part of your overall plan, then it is totally reasonable to view this stuff as an investment and focus on the equity, sell it, and buy something else when the time is right. And that makes a lot of sense. So all this to say that yes, you can think of this as an investment, but it may not be the best for your financial plan. It's personal at the end of the day. And on top of that, there are tax consequences here too, right? So if you're that single CRNA in your 30s who's buying condos when the time is right, you're going to sell that and buy another one that you think is going to appreciate, and you're going to take that equity and put it into the next property, and now all of a sudden your net worth is starting to grow. There's a lot of people doing that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there are a lot of tax implications you should be aware of too. The first one is that if you buy a condo for say $500,000, and then it goes up to, let's say, $700,000 in value, and you sell it, well, you have a $200,000 capital gain on your hands. Now, there's a section of the tax code called the personal residence exemption. And what that means is that when you sell your primary residence that you've lived at for 2 out of the last 5 years, you are awarded $250,000 of tax-free capital gains. So again, if you buy that $500,000 condo and the value goes up to $700,000, and you've been living in it for, let's say, a year and a half, well, any tax advisor would probably tell you to think hard about sticking it out for another 6 months before you sell it, because that would give you up to $250,000 of tax-free capital gains. And so this is a really handy thing of the tax code to pay attention to. It's 2 out of any 5 years. Here's something that works for some people. Some CRNA clients that we have who've done a great job with this. They've purchased a new house. They live in it. Their kids are grown up and they are out of the house. But they live in this house that they've purchased for 2 years. Then they go and purchase another house and go live in that, and then rent out the first house for 3 years. They renovate it, they try to build value in it, then they try to cash flow it out, meaning they collect enough in rental income to pay the mortgage. But then before that 5-year window is up, they sell house number 1. They take the cash and then they purchase house number 3. And once the 2 years is up with house number 2, they move into house number 3, rent out house number 2, and they keep doing that in order to take advantage of this personal residence exemption. It's $250,000 per spouse. So if you're married, $500,000 of tax-free capital gains is really pretty awesome. Now you also have state and local tax on top of that. Some states will adhere to that personal residence exemption. Some states will not. So understanding where you're buying and where you're living is a very important thing to also be aware of. Okay, so now back to whether it's an investment. And as I hope you can tell by this point of the show, it's really personal. It depends on your own financial planning, I think. You can make an argument that it should or should not be an investment. But I think the whole point of this discussion is that your decision whether to consider it an investment should be congruent with your values and the rest of your financial planning. So if you're a 30-year-old CRNA buying a $500,000 condo, living by yourself, and trying to grow your net worth, and you know that you're going to be moving around a lot, then it's absolutely, yes, an investment. You have no strings to that condo. You can pick up and move at any point. You can rent it out. You can sell it and buy something else. So it's very reasonable to think of it as an investment. Now, if you're married and have 3 kids, if you're in a place that's temporary, maybe you're a 1099 CRNA and going to move again in a couple of months or years down the road if your time horizon is short, and you know you're going to be selling the house sometime soon, it's also reasonable to think about it as an investment. But the moment that you start putting roots down in that house, the moment that you get into the school district that you want, the moment that you want stability for your kids, if that's important to you, if that's you, then it makes no sense to think of your home as an investment. Because the short-term real estate market really doesn't matter much to you. Interest rates matter a little bit because if you want to put in that pool or if you want to borrow some money, you do want the best interest rates, and that could impact things overall. But if you don't plan on selling the house anytime soon, yes, it is an asset on your balance sheet, but you should not think of it as an investment because that's simply not congruent with the rest of your long-term financial planning. So at the end of the day, shockingly enough, personal finance is personal. There's arguments for, there's arguments against. I hope you found this really helpful and valuable, and thank you for listening to this episode of MoneyRx for CRNAs Podcast. If you enjoy the show just as much as I enjoy creating it for you, then I'd really appreciate you leaving a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast. And while you're there, why don't you subscribe to the channel so that you never miss a future episode? It really helps me, it helps the show, plus it makes it easier for other CRNAs to access the content that we're creating week in and week out. And finally, if you want any more information on what you learned about in today's show, or how to find out the best way to pay less in taxes, invest smarter, and retire on your own terms, click the links in the show notes now and learn about how we work with our awesome CRNA client community. Until next time, make it a great day.
This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. This podcast does not engage in rendering legal, financial, or other professional services.